I'm a mental health therapist who has found that spirituality is extremely helpful with mental health issues and addiction issues, which is what I work on all the time, right? And so we're going to do a takeaway today, one that's fundamental, deeply spiritual, extremely helpful for anxiety in particular. For those of you who have struggled with that, I have. And so I found that there's a really deep spiritual technique that works wonderfully well. And it's really counterintuitive too. But we're going to talk about why, using some of my favorite movies we've talked about recently, Revolver and Fight Club, plus some Eckhart Tolle work. And I want to start, though, with basic conventional therapy, simple stuff, proactive ways to deal with anxiety. And here's a bunch of tested, studied ways. Exercise helps, breathing techniques, meditation, nutrition. Don't eat so many stimulants, decrease caffeine, maybe smoke less, that can help with anxiety. Spend more time in nature. Enjoy listening to music, enjoy playing music. Laughing tends to help. Laugh more often. Complaining doesn't help, okay? Improving your sleep habits helps. All these are conventional ways and something that we should all be doing if we have anxiety and mental health issues. Pretty simple, right? I mean, not necessarily easy to do, but it's pretty clear. Then you have the spiritual stuff, spiritual virtues, like patience. That helps diminish anxiety. Forgiveness, dropping resentment, that'll help. I mean, so many different spiritual skills that will do it, okay? But one of the most counterintuitive concepts is accepting your anxiety. We're in America, we like to cover our pain up. I work with meds all the time. The proper use of meds is a wonderful tool for mental health and addiction, okay? But the over-reliance on meds, the expecting something to fix you, that's one of the major issues that we have. And what is it? What is it about that? As Americans, I don't know about the rest of the world, but I know as Americans, including myself, we hate anxiety, we hate depression, we hate our pain. We think it's bad. In fact, in many circles, it's bad to admit that you've got an issue that you want to go talk to a therapist about, okay? Not many people have a hard time going to the gym if they want to get physically fit, but a lot of people struggle with the idea of saying, I have a therapist, okay? Like that's somehow shameful. Why? We think it's a negative. It's not a negative. Going to an obstetrician to help you deliver a baby is not a negative. You're getting some help, right? Getting a trainer at the gym, is it negative? Getting a doctor to help you with surgery in general is not negative. It's not negative to work with a therapist. But why do we have that in our mindset? Because we think mental health issues are bad. They're not bad. If anything, they're exactly what we need. And it's super important to learn how to deal with them correctly. We don't want to make it go away necessarily, but we do have to learn from it. And again, practice all these things. And then when you're ready, because there's different types of anxiety. Sometimes we have anxiety just because we haven't exercised and haven't slept well. That could be it, okay? Sleep better, get some exercise, you'll feel better. But some people have existential anxiety. Some people have anxiety in terms of their spiritual development and what they're ready for. And they're not ready to give up their old life and embrace the new life, the born-again life of a spiritual being. That comes with a lot of anxiety. And it's really the ego that is throwing a fit inside of us, and it's resisting pain, and that's what causes more pain. And then we don't learn and grow. So I'm going to go through just a couple teachings. Again, I say this stuff a lot. It's quite useful, and it's in movies, and we can learn from it and link it to some spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle. So this is from Revolver, Avi. That's the Andre Benjamin character. He's talking to Jake, and he tells Jake, embrace the pain, and you will win this game. Now, at the end, I have a little drawing of what the game is, okay? But in Revolver, they talk about how we're all in a game and we don't know it. It's a mental, psycho-spiritual game, okay? And dealing with pain effectively is one of the ways to win the game. We'll do that at the end. So embrace the pain, not avoid it, not cover it up, not be ashamed of it, okay? Embrace it, because somehow it's your friend. Remember, Jesus teaches, love your enemy. Sometimes our mental health is the enemy. And what makes it persist is saying, gee, I wish I didn't have this. I want it to go away. Well, no kidding. But then we try all these things and that doesn't work either. Well, the one thing we haven't tried is embracing it. Perhaps, maybe the universe knows what it's doing with you. In Romans 8:28, my favorite spiritual scripture, all things work together for good for those who love God. That means everything works together for those who are spiritual. And that includes our emotional issues. It includes anxiety. Somehow it's working together. In Fight Club, we just did this a couple weeks ago, when Tyler Durden burns the alter ego, or it's in reverse, he burns him and he says, stay with the pain, because because the narrator character is trying to make the pain go away. He says, stay with it. What you are feeling is premature enlightenment. All right? Not try to make the pain go away. And that's what we were trying to do most of the time. And there's the fuel for our alcohol and addiction problems in this country. I don't like the way I'm feeling. I need to make it go away. Well, embracing it and staying with it, learning from it somehow. Now, there's the key. It's a master stroke, ultimately. And then the military, lots of military people over the years have said, embrace the suck. Okay, this goes back actually a long way, but I know during the some of the Gulf War era, that was a pretty popular phrase in the Marines. There's been books written called "Embrace the Suck." And when you know you have to deal with suffering and you're gonna have to deal with adversity, you better look forward to it somehow, right? Embrace the difficulties. Of course, that makes the military more prepared to handle it. In our lives, like the Buddha's first noble truth is that we're gonna suffer. We'd all be better off embracing the suck, starting in like first grade, you know, because it's going to happen. Adversity is going to hit. And if we would just support each other during it and learn how to take it differently, we would feel better about it. Plus, we'd learn quicker and we'd get through it quicker. So all these teachings leads to Eckhart Tolle's Pain Body from the Power of Now. And I revisited it for the first time in over a decade recently, and I was just going through some of the teachings. And again, it's excellent. It's so simple, the power of now. What's it present in this moment? But I want to talk on what he was talking about, the pain body, and what to do if you're having anxiety, something comes over you, you're not sure what it's about. You might be physically fit, you eat well, you're not doing any of the negative stuff, you're getting good sleep, but all that, you've tried all that, yet you still have it. What's going on with that? And what techniques do you have, especially if you don't feel like doing those things? That's another issue with mental health. Lots of people have anxiety and depression, don't feel like exercising. Who feels like eating better or anything like that? Sometimes that makes you feel better, so you eat badly. Whatever the case may be, there's still an incredible technique that you can do that's actually super simple, as long as you believe it as an idea. Eckhart Tolle says that thoughts are on your head, okay? Your body is where you feel the emotions. See, if you try to think your way out of it, you're engaging the ego. And using your mind to try to reduce anxiety often triggers more anxiety for people. What's wrong with me? I wish I could make this go away. Wait, let me focus. I can't stop focusing. I can't do my deep breathing, right? Whatever, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't change anything. You don't learn anything. But you know what our emotions are? And it's in the body. It's the same thing as your thoughts. It's just physically felt. They're so linked, the thoughts and emotions. They're intricately linked. And so once you have the thought and you're trying to control that, but you can't, you have to surrender to the fact that now it's in your body. You're still feeling your thoughts, but then we resist them and we want to try to make it go away. That's not effective. So he says, the mind cannot win. And we're not going to be able to think our way out of it. So what do we have to do? He says, don't analyze it, just watch it. Be the observer. Now I love this about all the spiritual teachings. The ego is a tool. It's not who you are, okay? The ego is a physical tool for focusing on physical things, like where's my car keys? When do I pay my taxes? The ego is not an analyzer. The ego is not supposed to call things good or bad. It's supposed to try to remember where your car keys are. And what time does the movie start? Stuff like that. It's not supposed to call things good or bad. Ultimately, your spirit is there to teach you that there's nothing bad happening at all, okay? So once we engage the ego, it's not especially effective, and then we twist and we turn a lot more. So after you've tried all these things, here's what you can do. Surrender. Submit to the feeling. Just have the experience of the feeling. And what Eckhart Tolle says is, now as the observer, what you've done is disconnected or severed the link between the way you think and your emotional state. And now you are not using the ego anymore. And if anything, you're making it submit. It's now saying, I don't have this job anymore. I don't get to analyze this situation as good or bad. Now you just observe your feelings. And don't label it good or bad. It just is. So you experience the pain. You embrace it, right? You stay with it. And then he says, I love this line, with sustained conscious attention, your pain becomes fuel for the flame of consciousness. That's tremendous. Why is that? We aren't our mind. Our minds are relative anyways. All of us are little spiritual beings, and we got plopped down into these bodies, and we got spread out all throughout the world. And some of our bodies have different skin colors, and we have different genders and different heights and weights and all that kind of stuff. And then our minds get associated with that. We're not that. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and the mind shows up there. But that comes secondary to your relativity. Where were you born? What are your mom and dad like? You know, what were your neighbors like? What school did you go to? Did you have any health issues when you were younger? Any tragedies? Did stuff just go well for you, right? And we don't need to judge any of that as good or bad. If anything, people that had more adversity get to spirituality quicker, okay? So it's not about identifying with the mind. The mind continues to cause the problem. So what do we have to do? We have to submit. We have to surrender. I love to point out, most Christians don't know this. The word Islam means to surrender. The word Muslim means one who is surrendered, okay? The whole idea is to surrender to God's will, to surrender to that which we can't control anyways. It does mean to quit, but in a good way. We're not forcing people to surrender at our will. The fact is if you're having an overwhelming emotional experience, you can't try to get out, you can't get out of it, you can't think your way out of it, you submit to it. One of the best teachings ever is that's what Jesus was doing on the cross, right? There wasn't anything he could do physically anymore. He surrendered to the circumstances, and he knew why he was doing it. He was crucifying the ego, or the idea of the lower self, or the false temporary self. This is backed up by the Buddhist philosophy of detachment. It's the same thing. Can't control it. We only suffer because we're clinging to things. And we say things like, gee, I wish I didn't have mental health issues. Or the anxiety shows up in the first place because, gee, I don't want that to happen, or I wish that didn't happen. That's more ego clinging and grasping. And so whether it's Jesus or what a Muslim is or Buddha or whatever, they're all at the end game, and the highest level of spiritual teaching is telling us to let go. Okay? Go ahead and do all this stuff. But then in the very end, let go. And if you're having an emotional state, and I've had clients that did this exact thing, I asked them, have you ever been thankful for your depression? Have you ever been thankful for panic attacks and anxiety and your addiction? Have you ever actually said to the universe or God, thank you for this lesson? And almost everyone says no. And so I encourage them to try it. Practice being more grateful. There's a purpose and a reason behind our suffering, okay? And one of the best techniques to do is just sit with it, to surrender, to go ahead and give in and then feel it. Observe your pain. Where do you have it? Where in your body is it? And just notice it. Wow, that doesn't feel good there. It doesn't feel good there. And I don't like that, but that's okay. I'm just going to sit with it. Two things happen. One is you get through it quicker. I've seen people in my office have a panic attack. And when they're with someone who doesn't freak out with them, they get through it quicker. You will lessen your pain over time, the frequency of panic and anxiety. But it also is this wonderful aspect of the pain becomes fuel for consciousness, okay? And so here's this little drawing. Number one, there's the game that they're talking back up in Revolver. Here's the game. Our mind clings to physical. There's my little stick figure guy, and the mind clings, right? It's holding on to it. And this is what most of us are trying to do most of our lives, control things. I want it to go this way, and if it doesn't go this way, I won't be happy. And since it went that way, I'm anxious about it, or resentful, or whatever. And so we're clinging. But the submission, it tells the ego what its place is. You're secondary, okay? You exist, you have a role. I want to use you to remember to pay my taxes, to find my car keys. Totally fine. That's what the mind is for. And the ego is supposed to pay attention to physical things. And when we do this correctly, whatever step 2 is, we do this correctly, we actually appreciate the good stuff. We appreciate it. We don't brag about it. No man shall boast. If life is going well for you, you can use your mind and the ego to be thankful and grateful, which are spiritual techniques. Not to be cocky and arrogant and think you're superior. And so the ego becomes a nice little pet, because you learn how to put it in its place and it surrenders, right? What shows up? Well, the fuel for consciousness. Here's what you really are. You are a conscious being. And this is the food for the soul, if you will. Consciousness. And it's what we all have in common. Of course, your mind is a little different than mine. Your mind was born in your circumstances. My mind was born in mine. And if you were born in Spain, you're probably speaking Spanish, right? And if you're born in New England, you're a Patriots fan, whatever. That doesn't make you better or worse. It just makes your mind different than mine. But what makes the mind happen? The consciousness that fuels the mind. The very thing that Eckhart Tolle says when you submit and accept certain types of pain. I'm not talking about physical pain. You're having chest pains, go to the doctor. Don't just accept it, okay? I'm talking about mental health pain. When you accept and submit to it, and you trust it somehow, because sometimes that's exactly why we have the pain, okay? It's specifically non-specific. I just sometimes feel this pain, I don't know why. Well, it's a tough journey to break free from the ego. You might not be having any type of anxiety because of anything specific that happened. And yet you have to sit with it anyways. It's the end game. Sometimes it's the highest level of spiritual development, is to say what Jesus said. Right before he was crucified, he said, "Not my will be done, but thy will." He was sweating blood in that story, which is a pretty good metaphor for he was leaking spirit, okay? But if you want to take it literally, he was sweating blood. How nervous was that guy? How much anxiety was he having? He knew he was going to get killed, as the story goes. And as the metaphor would be, the parable, he knew his ego was dying. That's why we have anxiety half the time, okay? The ego doesn't want to give up its control. And yet, if you'd like to be a spiritual being, you sit with the pain. You take the pain. You embrace the suck. You trust it. You feel the pain. And then if you're spiritual and you like to work on this stuff, we share it with each other. Hey, dude, how much pain you going through? Okay. Oh, it hurts, man, but I can do it. You're going to do it. Let's get through it together. You know, like military, it works. You get through it together. Now our pain has purpose, okay? Now there's reason for it. It's why all things work together for good for those who love God. So here we have at the end, the mind, when it submits, when it surrenders, has to let go of control. And so it let go of this physical body. And now I just have consciousness with mind secondary. I have mind in quotes. Your mind comes from consciousness. But your mind is relative to your experiences. You want to experience a nice, peaceful feeling? Well, then you surrender. And now what do we have? Now the body's free. If the anxiety can go away, and you tried all these things, try submitting. When you surrender to it, not my will be done, but thy will, you're free.